Chapter 34. Given what was occurring, Karen was stressed and knew that stressing would not help the situation. She chose simply not to think about Charlie and what he would do, and focus on her daily life. Coming out of the pet food store, Kevin asked Karen, "Where do you want to go now?" Karen knew that Kevin was very busy, but she also wanted to be pampered and behave like a spoilt wife in front of her husband. She took Kevin's arm and shook it. "I want to do some duty-free shopping. Would you like to accompany me?" Kevin did not say whether he was willing or not. He just opened the door and said, "Get in the car then." Karen thought that her guise might not have worked, but she saw that Kevin had set the destination on the navigation system as a duty-free shopping mall. Kevin didn't make time to go shopping in the past. Whatever clothes he wore were all custom-made by the Kyle family's private designer and atelier. Even if it was the material for a piece of underwear, it would be carefully selected and sent to his wardrobe after a delicate manufacturing process. Hence, when they saw that Kevin was going shopping with Karen, Nick and Amelia, who had been following them, were so surprised that their eyeballs almost popped out. Nick was to calm down and said, "Amelia, the international video conference was coming to a critical moment." When Director Kevin heard that Karen had been called away by Charlie, he immediately abandoned the group of high-ranking officials from Europe and ran over to the coffee shop. Now he is accompanying her to buy dog food and go shopping. "Do you think this is what our Director Kevin, who does not rest all year round, would do?" Amelia murmured, "This is not what our fast-paced director would do. But he has been busy for so many years. Now, there is someone who can make him come out occasionally to take a walk." Nick looked over and said, "Amelia, do you know why Director Kevin had suddenly decided to marry Karen?" Amelia shook her head and said, "I don't know what Director Kevin was thinking. Kevin had always been very thoughtful. If he was willing to let them understand more, they would understand him. If he didn't want them to understand anything, then they wouldn't see anything." Amelia and all the others could not figure out why he and Karen had gotten married. Nick said, "When Director Kevin decided to marry Karen, you were with him. I think you should know." Nick thought for a moment and said, "Do you think we should inform Old Master Kyle regarding this issue first? Old Master Kyle is too old to be surprised this way. What if?" Amelia looked at Nick and said very seriously, "Director Kevin has his own plans for this matter. It's not something for you to worry about. You and I have been by his side for so many years. I don't need to remind you of his bottom line." Nick also knew that he shouldn't care too much, so he shut up and stopped talking about letting the old master of the Kyle family know in advance. He looked at Karen standing before them and said, "From my observation during this period of time, Karen is indeed a great girl. However, Director Kevin has met more outstanding people before, and he didn't want to marry those women. How did he choose to marry Karen?" Amelia said faintly, "I'm guessing it may be out of pity." 3 years ago, when Kevin had first met Karen, it was during her most humiliating moment. Karen was drunk and had even vomited all over him. He thought that there would be no more interaction between them for the rest of his life. But he didn't expect that he would see Karen on the very first day he returned to California 3 years later. At that time, Amelia did not recognize Karen. It was difficult to recall someone whom she had only met once 3 years ago. However, Kevin, who had never remembered people well, recognized Karen at a glance. On that day, they had made an appointment with the previous head of Innovative Tech to discuss the acquisition of the company, and then happened to stumble upon Karen on a blind date. The man on the blind date looked very ordinary, and his behavior was crude. As he spoke to her, he wanted to touch Karen inappropriately. Karen was a hot-tempered person, so she lifted her hand and gave the man a slap. Then, the man retorted with some ugly remarks. He called her a prostitute that was trying to build a reputation for herself. He even brought up all the terrible things that had happened to her in New York 3 years ago. Nick said disapprovingly, "There are so many women worthy of pity in the world. Why haven't I seen Director Kevin pity other women?" Amelia said, "Perhaps this is the fate we are talking about." Nick thought for a moment and asked, "Wouldn't you say, Director Kevin's ability to recognize people is below average? 3 years ago they had met once, but how could he recognize her again in 3 years?" Amelia said, "Director Kevin is a man of cleanliness, and he was vomited by a drunkard. Don't you think he would remember?" When it came to Kevin being vomited on, Nick gloated. Karen had thrown up on Kevin when she was drunk. It must have been the most tragic thing to happen in Kevin's 20-odd years of life. Nick and Amelia, following behind Kevin and Karen, kept chatting along the way, but Karen and Kevin, who were walking in front, did not say a word. Kevin had returned to his usual state. He looked so aloof that no one could get close to him. It was just his normal self. He didn't talk much at ordinary times. Along the way, he did speak to Karen. When she asked a question, he answered a question, and Karen could not find any more topics to talk about after asking too many questions. Kevin did not speak much, but he did not let go of Karen's hand. He held hers firmly all the way and led her to walk slowly. Karen was not a person who liked to hang around, and she didn't have much time to hang around. Usually, if she needed to buy something, she would go straight to the shop and buy it. She didn't want to buy anything today, so she wandered around aimlessly. After strolling around for a while, they came to a branded scarf shop, which was a brand that Karen wanted to purchase it, but was hesitant to do so. The least expensive scarf from the shop was also priced at several $100s, and the new arrivals worth thousands of dollars apiece made the scarves an absolute luxury. Kevin had given Karen a pair of new gloves a few days ago. Karen was worried about what she would buy for him in return, so this was a good opportunity. It would be winter soon, so a scarf was very practical. If she bought a scarf of this price for him, he would be happy. She held Kevin's hand and said, "Let's go in and have a look." Kevin nodded. "Welcome." Before the sales assistant could finish her greeting, she was stunned and stammered. "Director Kevin." It turned out that the lady was Madonna, who had been fired from Innovative Tech not long ago. After the loss of her job, she had chosen to be a sales assistant. "Do you know me?" Kevin glanced over. He did not remember such a woman at all. The excitement on the sales assistant suddenly dimmed, especially when she saw Karen and Kevin clasping their fingers together so intimately. This made her furious. Chapter 35. Karen saw that Madonna's eyes were full of hatred, and she even tightened her grip on Kevin. "Miss, could you please recommend a few men's scarves for me?" The sales assistant gritted her teeth in hatred and stood still. Another staff quickly came over and said sweetly, "Do you want to buy it for your boyfriend? Your boyfriend is so handsome." Karen smiled and didn't correct her. Karen picked out a plain scarf from the samples brought over by the sales staff, feeling that the color and material were very suitable for Kevin. "How about a try?" Karen blinked and looked at Kevin expectantly. Although she didn't know anything about these goods, she knew that Kevin's clothes were all handmade high-end goods. She was worried that he would refuse to try these on. Karen held her breath and waited for his answer, but he nodded without thinking. "Okay." Kevin agreed. The sales assistant then approached to help him. Karen took the scarf from the sales assistant and said, "I'll do it." Karen was only about 168 centimeters tall, and Kevin was 1.8 meters tall, which was almost 20 centimeters taller than her. She was still much shorter than him, even in high heels. Kevin lowered his head slightly to let Karen put the scarf on him. They were so close to each other that they could feel each other's warm breath. Karen was not distracted at first, but Kevin's breath misted on her neck, making her feel limp and numb. Her fair face unconsciously turned red. Madonna, the sales assistant that greeted them at the door, was standing beside him, and she was so jealous that her eyes turned red. She lowered her body and clenched her fists again and again. She really wanted to push Karen away from Kevin. Karen also noticed the jealous look in Madonna's eyes, thinking that this woman was really stubborn and always coveted others' husbands. She lifted her lips and kissed Kevin's lips as she helped him wrap up the scarf. Kevin's expression was slightly startled. Karen took a step back and asked with a red face, "Do you like it?" What she asked was whether he liked the scarf or not, but Kevin understood it as to whether he liked her kiss or not. "I like it." His voice was low and attractive. His usually cold face had a slight smile on it, which made him look particularly warm. "Then let's take this one." Karen turned her head away and did not dare to look at him any longer. The price of the scarf was $999. In the past, Karen would not buy such costly things no matter what the reason. This time, for Kevin, she was willing to spend a lot of money. The sales assistant was also happy to meet such an easy customer, and her attitude became more enthusiastic. "Madam, this scarf comes in a set for couples. Would you like to choose one for yourself?" Karen did not think about it and quickly waved her hand. "No, I don't need it." If she asked for another one, it would cost another $999, which meant that she would have to spend more than half of her recent 2-month salary. It would be too distressing. When Karen refused this, she heard Kevin say, "Could you please show my wife the scarf?" Hearing this, the sales assistant immediately handed over the female version of the scarf. "And it turns out you are a couple. This scarf is a special edition that our company designed for young couples this year. It was not available in previous year's collections." It was true that salespeople are very clever. Anyway, when they sounded pleasant, customers were always happy to hear what they had to say. Kevin had many scarves in the past, but they were all carefully made by the Kyle family's private tailor. Compared with these so-called famous brands, they were much higher in quality. Kevin took the scarf to wrap around Karen. Her skin was fair, and it looked even fairer in the plain gray-blue scarf. Her supple face made people want to take a bite. Courteously, Kevin kissed her on the corner of her mouth, and then asked in a hoarse voice, "Do you like it?" Karen nodded at first, then shook her head. Kevin smiled and said, "Pack up both scarves for us." Karen grabbed his hand, but she was defeated when she saw his inquiring eyes. At worst, she would just spend these $2,000 to buy 2 scarves to show off her money just this once. In the future, she could save her money for a year and get the amount back. She could not let him see her as stingy. Kevin would bring along his assistant wherever he went to pay for his bills, so he usually did not carry any cards or cash. So naturally, he didn't take the initiative to pay for this. Looking at Karen making the payment, he did not utter any words. Despite his lack of initiative to foot the bill, he had given Karen his supplementary credit card. He had also given her a monthly salary card, and Karen could do whatever she wanted with these cards. After the payment was completed, Kevin realized that she was not using his cards. His eyes narrowed, and he turned around to avoid looking at her, as if he was angry. Seeing such a large sum of money being swiped on her card, Karen felt a sharp agony in her heart, and hence, she did not notice Kevin's expression. But, the moment she turned around and saw Madonna's envious and hateful eyes, she felt that $2,000 was extremely worth it. "Kevin, let's go." She took the initiative to hook her arm around Kevin's and said while walking, "Do you know that shop assistant?" Kevin said serenely, "There are so many people who know me. It's impossible for me to know every one of them." Karen chuckled and said, "What a heartless man you are." Although she called him heartless, but she was happier than ever in her heart. After all the tricks that Madonna had used to get close to Kevin, in the end, Kevin did not even know who she was at all. It was more awful than smacking her in the face. Madonna gritted her teeth while watching them walk away. She was furious, and even felt especially irritated when she heard Kevin say that he did not know her at all. "Madonna, I don't care where you used to work at. Since you have come to work in our store, you must always remember that our customers are the priority. Please keep your temper under control." The manager of the scarf store had seen that Madonna was angry and hastily reminded her of their policies. Madonna bit her lip angrily, but remained silent, staring at Karen and Kevin walking away. All kinds of malicious thoughts flashed through her mind. She would stomp on this woman, Karen, under her feet one day. Kevin was a big name in the world of business. He did not only have remarkable business acumen, but he was also able to predict his competitors' actions accurately. He knew that Karen was showing off her affection on purpose earlier. Still, he played along intentionally. This was because seeing her being happy made him happy too. However, Kevin did not forget that Karen had not used his card for the bill. He asked sadly, "Why did you not use the card that I gave you?" Did he think that she didn't want to swipe his card? It was a huge amount, which Karen also wished to spend by using his card, but this was the first gift she had wanted to give him. How could she use his money to buy it for himself? Karen pouted and said, "Actually, this is my first gift to you. I have to pay for it on my own to show my sincerity." Chapter 36. Kevin was very satisfied with Karen's answer. They were in public, but he caressed her cheek and kissed her lips gently. Being watched by the people around them, Karen felt very shy. She pushed him away, but he pulled her all the more firmly, so that her body was attached to him. This man, Kevin, usually looked gentle and refined, and his gestures were elegant and exquisite, but his strength was really strong. He could not be pushed away at all. What's wrong with this person? Is there something wrong with his nerves recently? Karen thought. His behavior changed every second, which made her unable to keep up with him. Just as Karen was getting so embarrassed that she wanted to hide somewhere, Kevin finally let go of her and said, "Well, this is my present for you." Karen's heart was in a mess. She felt dispirited. This gift was not valuable at all. If he really wanted to express gratitude towards me, Karen thought, he could simply give me some more practical gifts. However, when she turned her head and looked at the furious eyes of the people in the distance, she did not think so anymore. Instead, she dove back into Kevin's arms. This man was her husband. She could show off her love to him, and she didn't need to care about what others would think, especially like Madonna. Seeing Karen slipping into his arms, Kevin took the opportunity to hug her and whispered, "I'm giving you all my time tonight. What else do you want to do?" "Let me think about it." Karen raised her head and pondered about what to do next with him. At this time, Kevin's personal phone rang, and he said, "Hang tight for me for a while. I'll answer this call first." Karen nodded. "Sure." Kevin walked to one side and answered the phone. Karen gazed around and saw a shop selling freshly squeezed juice. She went to purchase 2 glasses of orange juice. After making her order and taking the juice, she saw Kevin hurrying back and he apologized. "Karen, I have something urgent to deal with. I can't go shopping with you. I'll ask someone to send you home first." Kevin had consistently been busy, and Karen knew it. She said thoughtfully, "You go and do your work. I can take the subway or a taxi back on my own." Kevin did not reply. He picked up the phone and dialed Nick's number. He gave the address clearly and asked Nick to send Karen back home. Hanging up the phone, he said, "I may not return tonight. Go back and rest early. Don't wait for me. Most importantly, do not see Charlie once more." Karen nodded. Before she could speak, Kevin had already left briskly. This was the first time Karen had seen him so anxious since she had met him. What had happened to make him leave in such a hurry? Karen could only think of Charlie. Thinking of his words and eyes in the afternoon, she felt panicked and befuddled. She quickly picked up her mobile phone and dialed Kevin's number, but his phone was engaged for a long time, and it was the same even though she dialed several times. "Mrs. Kyle, I'll send you home." Shortly after, Nick arrived. Karen hung up the phone and asked in a hurry, "Special Assistant Nick, what happened to Kevin? Did Charlie from the Gook family do something to the innovative tech again?" Nick said. "Director Kevin will be fine. Young Master Gook of the Gook family can't do anything to innovative tech. Don't worry." Nick was Kevin's most trusted confidant. Karen knew that there was no hope for her to get any specific information from him if Kevin had asked for him not to share any details. Karen told herself to believe in Kevin once more, that he could handle Charlie, but she was still worried. After getting in the car, she turned on her mobile phone and dialed Kevin's number. He was still on the phone. Unable to get through to Kevin's phone, Karen felt much more anxious. She flipped through the phone log she received in the afternoon and looked at the unknown phone number on it. She hesitated whether she should call and confront Charlie directly. After thinking about it, Karen finally put the phone away. When Kevin had left, he told her not to see Charlie again. Anyway, she did not want him to be unhappy. At the same time, Kevin was sitting in his Bentley, driven by the driver, old Mr. Watson, and quickly ran to the largest entertainment complex in California, Charm. The driver, Mr. Watson, had been driving Kevin for 20 years, which meant that he had watched Kevin grow up. At this time, he glanced at Kevin from the rearview mirror and saw that Kevin's face was pale. It was rare for Kevin to have such an expression, unless it was that notorious girl back home that has been making trouble again. The last time Kevin had been so furious was when she had just stepped into the entertainment circle half a year ago. In half an hour, the car had reached its destination. When Kevin got out of the car, his expression looked far better than it was previously, but the signs, "Don't get close to me," were still written on his face. A man in his 20s rushed over and said, "Young master, you're finally here." "Where is Polaris?" Kevin asked as he walked. "She is in the VIP room on the 3rd floor, Spring Hall." The man rushed to the front and led the way for Kevin. Spring Hall? Hearing this name, Kevin frowned deeper and walked faster. Stepping into such a beautiful place, smelling the pungent smell of alcohol inside, and looking at a man and a woman hugging and kissing each other, Kevin's veins began to throb on his forehead. He wanted to demolish this place if he could. "Young master, the elevator is here," the man said cautiously. Glancing around, Kevin followed the man into the elevator to the 3rd floor and went directly to the VIP room named Spring Hall. In his opinion, this kind of place was loaded with germs all over the place. He wished he could even hold his breath while here. The man guiding him grew up with the Kyle family, so he naturally knew of Kevin's mysophobia. He strolled ahead and led the way for Kevin. "Young master, Polaris is in there." The door opened, and Kevin breathed in sharply. If he hadn't been brought up with manners, he would definitely rush over and throw out the bunch of men inside. In the center of the room, there was a woman with heavy makeup, wearing a skimpy vest and hot pants, dancing close to a man. Several other men were sitting unsteadily on the sofa in the room. Some were whistling, while others were shouting. Their eyes were sparkling like hungry wolves. Kevin took off his suit coat and walked over. He pulled the semi-naked woman into his arms and put his coat on her. He said coldly, "Do you know what you are doing?" The woman squinted her beautiful almond-shaped eyes and hooked her arms around Kevin's chin. "Leo, why are you here?" With this, she giggled and said, "Are you here to see me dance too? I'll dance for you now." Kevin pushed away from her little hand and picked her up. He didn't want to talk to her anymore. "My friends, I'll go first. I'll play with you some other day." In Kevin's arms, the woman still attempted to blow kisses to several men in the room. Kevin scowled at her furiously and grabbed her hands. She was not permitted to move anymore.